One of the non-chemical method to control weed is using biological control. Okay, so this video, let's talk about biological control. I will only discuss the surface about this topic because the discussion on biological control is very huge and lengthy. I hope you may get at least the principles behind this method and find your own reading materials for further understanding. Take some time to read this. This is important for you to prepare for this topic. Biological weed control is the action of parasites, predators, or pathogens to maintain another organism's population at a lower average density than would occur in their absence. Okay, the term was first used by Smith in 1964. Biological control is usually thought of as intentional introduction of parasites, predators, or pathogens to achieve control, but it's also a natural phenomenon. Okay, scientists can discover the control potential of natural parasites, predators, or pathogens and exploit it to achieve human ends. The aim is to maintain the offending organism's population at a lower average density, not to eradicate it, but to reduce populations to a non-economic level. So this is important. We are not eradicate it, but just make sure that it reduce, so it's manageable. I can use it in other words. So biological control will never be the solution to every weed problem. It will be employed as one weed management practice among many. Primarily because of well-known problems with chemical weed control, biological control may become more important relative to other control techniques, but it will never be the solution to all weed problems in intensive monoculture monocultural agriculture, especially for the monocultural agriculture. In its classical or idealized form, biological weed control can be permanent. It can be permanent because once an organism is released, it may be self-perpetuating, and control will continue without further human intervention. So it kind of like automatically. Subsequently, if theory becomes reality, the weed doesn't have to be actively managed by people. The biological control provides control without further human intervention. This ideal biocontrol is certainly not always, and in fact rarely achieved. In theory, there is no environmental pollution, there is no chemical pollution, there may be biological pollution, but but there is minimal pollution from biocontrol organisms and no environmental mammalian toxicity as they may be after chemical use. Okay, so if you use a chemical, so probably there is some effect to other animals, but rarely to it rarely by the how to say, the biological control, because they most often invade environmentally sensitive areas where all kind of pollution are to be avoided, such as the aquatic and streamside areas. Okay, biocontrol may be the best option for management of invasive species theoretically. In summary, biological control is slow, often less effective, and commonly less certain than herbicides or chemical control or mechanical control. Biological control or biocontrol, particularly in disturbed cropping situations, will not control as many different weeds as other techniques. It won't eradicate weed problems, but most other techniques won't either. It is an intervention technique that may, as herbicide do, have unanticipated effects. So this is one major disadvantages. They are not, usually they are very selective. So we want some solution that can fit all, but biological control doesn't do that. You can look at this summarized table of the advantages and disadvantages of biological control. I may say this is I want to stress out, this is an important table. So for you to understand what is the limitation, or what is really the why people I repeat again, this is a very important indication of how why people are going to for biological control, and at the same time what are their limitation, what's the limitation of biological control itself. So kind of like pro and cons for this method of controlling weight. Conscious use of biological control of weights depend on two things. The first is that it is actually, but not always, easier to control and introduce species that in the process of introduction was freed of natural predators. The second requirement is that it is best to introduce predators that have been freed of their natural predators during introduction to the weights area. This requirement presupposes and successful biological control depends on several assumptions. First, the weed to be controlled has a native habitat, and insect or disease will give control. The second one, an insect or disease will give control. The third one, they have a natural reproduction. The organism has fecundity, or the ability to reproduce in the new habitat, and it will occupy all niches of the weeds that they infest. Fourth one, there's a genetic composition. The weeds genetic composition in its new home will be identical to its now distant relatives in its old home. In other words, moving will not change the weed in any significant way. This validity of this assumption has not been determined yet. And number 5, the control organisms can be reared in captivity. So which means that if you have, let's say for instance, insects, you can kind of like rearing. It's easy for to rear the insects. So rearing, rare. Okay. And then finally, searching capacity. So after the organism is released, it will search out the weed to be controlled and be self-dispersing in the right places. So actually, the application of biological control is a very long process. Many success stories of biological controls require decades of research and trials before being implemented. I myself sometimes try to avoid biological control because this is my personal view, because it's very lengthy, takes so many times. I will do biological control just for my hobby, or just my for my interest. So this not it's not for my short term kind of like research. I will give you paper discussing biological control, especially in Malaysia. Actually, if you go back to the paper by Baki on invasive weed species in Malaysia, he also mentioned about this biological control in it. So read it, and we can discuss about it in the class. If you are interested in biological control, please read the textbook again. Use these questions to guide your reading for better understanding.